Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of art and popular cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Miguel Aido, Tomás Ferreira is also here with us,
Hey.
and of course Leonardo Miranda.
Here I am.
Today we talk about Beware of the Car, but before any ado, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply give us a like. Beware of the Car is a 1966 Soviet comedy drama directed by Eldar Ryazanov, based on a screenplay by Emil Braginsky. The film follows a humble Soviet insurance agent, Yuri, who steals fancy cars from corrupt officials. But as fate would have it, his best friend and theater enthusiast detective Maxim is on his trail, unaware of the car thief's real identity. Recognized as a film noir parody, highly unusual in Brezhnev-era society, Beware of the Car is credited for launching Soviet political satire as a film genre. However, was Royale Without Cheese as fascinated with his little schemes and scams amongst dear old Mother Russia's officers and officials? Fellas, drive in.
I'm here. I'm
So
ready.
you're wondering,
Let's
dear listeners, what does this film have to do with America and the Cold War? I say nothing because not everything has to do with America. This is a comedy.
it?
Destroyed.
Get
This
with
is
the
a
program.
comedy.
This is a comedy.
Get
It's
with
not all
the
about
program,
you.
man.
Get your politics out of my films.
Let's
all about
just
the Cold
debate
War.
a nice little Russian comedy.
Quite new, quite different. I have to say, when I started watching this movie, I was surprised that the Russians had a sense of humor. I'm kidding. Don't kill me. What I meant to say was, what my friend meant to say was, he's a funny guy. He likes to, a little schmooze funny. Not all the gloomy things you have. Sorry.
We
Scratch
needed
that,
this
reverse.
film to clearly think about the Soviet Union in another way.
In a
In
light
terms
way.
of
Just-
cinema,
Grossier.
of course.
Yeah, because normally you have your Tarkovskys and whatnot, and you think,
Dense.
contemplative, and that's good, but dense and sad, gloomy atmospheres. This comes as a breath of fresh air. Comedy, light stuff, satirical. It's actually not the first time I have seen satire in the Soviet Union regarding, the regime. I have seen it before, and it's quite funny, actually. So, but Russia, I think I've seen from other countries, like, subsidiary satellite countries of like communist Russia, but not from Russia. And this one was quite a surprise, very reminiscent in terms of its music and tone of Pink Panther for some reason. I was watching
Yeah.
kind of these sequences where he robs the car,
music
even the
mostly.
very, the very opening sequence is so funny. The way that they cover it, they film it. It's like just how you see him up there in the sky in this narrating voice, telling that this story came from this town and that town, and we are not quite certain. Anyway, watch the guy, and he's just going down this building, this chimney, so intricate pathway into this little thing, a car in a garage to steal it, and then you see this streak of light, in his eyes. He's almost like an animated character, something surreal out of a cartoon, and you have this jazzy music. It's just so all of this for this little item. Well, it's a big item, it's a car, but it's not a gold vault, it's nothing out of this world. So it's very funny that did it need to be this complicated? No. Is it funny? Yes. So yeah, that happens a lot throughout this film. And the main character, there are two really, but the main car thief, the other one being the detective Maxim, but Yuri is quite the charming and chatting character, particularly because of his smile. We were talking a lot about smiles today because of Chaplin. His smile he holds such an innocence and the childlike candor and heart warmth to him that I think really contributes to the film. And this film is an example of great casting in terms of the detective, of his stoicism, but also how bizarre that a detective, a policeman, who normally in American films is this kind of Robert Mitchum kind of fella, or like Sam Spade from Bogart, very strong guy, and you have this guy who's in the theater, and nothing against the theater, but you just wouldn't see someone being that sensitive, I guess, so connected with, his inner actor, you wouldn't see a detective outside the profession of detective with a hobby. And, in this case, his hobby being like a theater amateur enthusiast, and the car thief, the person he's after, is in there with him, and they become best friends through that very hobby. That makes it so much more intriguing and funny, I think. and the way they kind of meet together at the theater is very surprising. The camera following along in this hypnotic movement, Yuri, the main character, the car thief, coming late to class and then bumping into him, and Tim so cozy together and laughing at each other like little schoolboys. I saw you at the play, you were so good. It's just really seduces you as a viewer to their friendship. And like the teacher being like, "Oh, you stop, attentive to class. Oh, sorry, sir." So, they have this kind of schoolboy mate quality to them both that is I think was very well captured in the film to
I
sort of
love that scene. The
crack
theater
this
scene
more
is
adult
great.
veneer of the characters, because they are insurance agents and detectives, very adult, very manly, but then suddenly they have this childlike quality to them with the theater and whatnot. So that scene is very good. Yeah, Mike, passing the ball on to you.
No, yeah, I mean that scene was great. I think it was so well edited because the focus, the narrative focus, the camera always comes back to the sort of theater director doing this ridiculous speech about how amateur theatrics will
He's
trump
better than professional.
professional ones. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because actors are not paid. I was
Yeah.
laughing like, what the hell is this guy
Yeah.
saying? But the way it's like it's not a full speech, so we keep coming back to him, and every time he says something more ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, I really like this film. To me, it reminded me a lot. Like, if it had like deaths, I could have seen this film be like a Coen Brothers film
If he
in the
had
way that,
depth,
yeah, like more violence, a bit
all
like
right.
of their style. Because in terms of the comedy, the way the characters are connected, they meet in the theater. I don't know. It was very reminiscent of their films, and the directing as well. I mean, it's very dynamic. I mean, if it wasn't for the obvious black and white sort of period, time things, you could really see this film being shot in today's age, because it's a very sort of dynamic, down to earth film, and it doesn't really feel like it's from the 1960s. I think, other than obviously the black and white and everything that makes it a film from the 60s. But other than that, it's very sort of modern looking. I thought, and so that with the story and the way the characters are linked, and sometimes the absurdist comedy, really reminded me of something the Coens would have done, or
I totally
Yeah,
can say
that's
that. Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
yeah, that's a very good. I hadn't thought about that, but makes sense, especially
yeah.
because even though the film has this satirical edge, it's very clearly, the film. It's a bit farcical in its in the narrative development. There's many moments, as you say, that are absurdist, but it still has like a lot of heart and like a lot of attention to the characters that I really appreciated. That I was maybe a bit scared that it was just going to be like absurdism. But there's an emotional side to it that I appreciated. The one thing that maybe I think could have been done more is develop more even the relationship between Yuri and Maxim. I thought there was like something just missing there to really take it to another level in terms of when Maxim discovers that Yuri is the thief, that you feel more of a shock in him, in more of a dilemma. But I think maybe that also has to do with the fact that, like, when I read the synopsis, turns out it's his best friend who's doing the stealing. So I went in thinking that they were already
That
best
already
friends.
was the
Yeah, exactly,
relationship
a
stuff.
prior
Yeah.
relation. But then you find out, oh no, they don't know each other. So the film is developing that on top of everything. So I think
But
maybe
no,
they.
that raises an interesting point, because I actually think there is something missing there. They could have had more screen time for the relationship a little
Yeah.
bit. And that, I think this is a valid point, because I think the beginning takes a bit much time with the various thievings, the various moments of stealing cars, to kind of create this aura of a mystery thief out there, kind of robbing more than one car in the past year. And I'm like, we don't really need a lot of time around this. We could have had one theft at the beginning, and then the second one around this kind of bureaucrat guy that we know is Dima. Yeah, Dima, who is trying to steal the car from more than once he can. Why don't you just get on with it? Just at the is it like through at the third try he finally steals the car? Like, make it a second try, you know. Meanwhile, they could have already the second scene of this movie or the third scene could be them meeting up together at the theater, the detective and the thief Yuri. So I think the film does take its sweet ass time until these two characters kind of collide, and it could have arranged it a little bit better at the beginning.
Especially because by the end, Maxim gives sort of an impassioned speech about how he should be freed.
Exactly.
And it does seem like they are closer than the film would
Yeah.
have shown. So yeah, I do get that. It didn't really bother me, but now that you're saying, yeah, I do see that. And by the end, I can see that how it seems like they were closer, and that's not entirely seen.
Yeah, I really like the film. It's just to take it to the next level, to really connect with that. Was missing a bit of that, but I think it's a brilliant film, and it's very surprising again because of that. The factor of all you know is Eisenstein and Tarkovsky and the guy who made Loveless, and The Return. You know, those very heavy, like depressing films, and then suddenly it's just a comedy. But yeah, so it's very, very interesting to see such a a clear, lovable film like this and see, okay, they're capable. They're not just sad. We're sorry about the stereotype.
And the peripheral characters are interesting too. Like the boss that Yuri has. I mean, what an interaction when they first. I'm so intrigued by this man. His soft-spoken voice. He's not a rough boss at all. You know, he's just the things that the writer makes him say are so funny, and it's just. He's just so forgiving, you have so many relatives. What can I do?
You keep dying and getting sick.
Oh, mortality, it's our sentence of all humans, and the camera dances around with them in the kind of that clerk space, full of desks. And he finally sits, always soft-spoken, but at the same time, very, giving you the lesson that you need to hear. It was very funny, I think, even
but then
to
at the end, but what a worker. Like at the trial.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
And in the chase scene I really love
the chase scene is amazing. I need to tell you because that is one of the best chase sequences I've ever seen in my life. Because for this, and let's place it in the placement, like it's a 60s movie. And I have to say, it's better than chase sequences I have seen in James Bond movies. Like, I immediately go to the Goldfinger sequence with the Aston Martin DB5. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing in that movie? Because that is such. I mean, it's good. It's a good one. Yeah, it's fun. But when you see this, I'm like, how did you see what these guys are doing? I mean, these guys took a real location, and it's so funny what he does with the car as well. I mean, you have these aerial shots and the cars turning around, and going off the road. I was like,
car hiding, kind of hiding, and reversing. I mean, like he knew exactly when the bike was passing by to reverse.
Yeah,
and it's on cue, on action, live, and then you have like projections in the Goldfinger one, and it's just kind of fakey and corny, and I'm a Bond fan. I can go with it. I have fun with it, and it's done in an energetic way. But when you see this sequence, it's like, Jesus, this was. And then you have a moment where the cars, the motorbike and the car are going sideways in opposite directions. One is going this way, the other is trying to follow up, and having a conversation at the same time as they are on movement. It's very funny. So great sequences. They must have stopped the whole highway for that.
Yeah, and there's a moment where they both go under this sort of truck passing by, and they go on.
Yeah, very Buster Keaton like. Yeah.
It was reminding, very reminiscent of
like Jesus
Chaplin Keaton movies.
Yeah, and it's like that's dangerous. Like you have to coordinate that very well.
Yeah.
And I love like when they just slow down because they're going through a kid zone, like a school area, and they're just going very slowly. It's so stupid. I laughed
very hard when they were waiting for the sign of now you can.
Yeah.
And then there's the narrative voice. Actually, the voiceover really helps to this idea of you're with this narrator evaluating the situation from a third point of view, and he's saying, my companion right there in the back was very courteous at the same time. He was also waiting for the kids. Just makes it even funnier. That kind of outlook. Nothing is serious. Nothing is too serious for them. It's just the
narrator is great. His voice is also very stern and like assertive, so it really works to, as a counterpoint to the silliness of everything, but he's also saying and commenting on very silly things a lot of the time, so it really works.
Yeah, and one of the end parts of him was like, and yeah, we just heard about this story. We're not sure where it's placed or even if it happened, but now it's ending. Just like it just says this. It's
Yeah.
almost like his last comment. Just very. It's almost like narration only works when you make fun of it. It's sometimes in movies, it's like the impression that you get.
Yeah.
If you use narration as a way to mock other narrations, fine.
Depends how you use it seriously.
No, I know,
The
but
thing,
I mean, sometimes
yeah,
it's like we see more often bad ones. Than...
it's fresher, it's newer when it's done like this because it's
Mhm.
unexpected. You don't see it a lot, I would
And it's
say,
not
and that's
it's
why
not
it's so irreverent.
overdone. Yeah, it's not overdone. I think they place it at very good times. At the beginning and at the end, obviously makes sense. But then when it comes up, it's not overbearing. It really works. It's
Yeah,
great.
and I was gonna say
Yeah.
the same thing about the music because the film really starts with using it a lot, but then it kind of disappears for a long period of time in the movie. When things get a bit more sort of serious, they get more at the core of the characters and why he's doing it, and when the revelation happens that he's doing the giving the money to the kids' charity or whatever, and then it comes back just for a moment again, very sort of silly, when he throws the hat and the sort of, I don't know what he had, like a notebook to the sea, kind of saying goodbye to his profession, but then he comes back to steal another car, and so he go gets the hat again. And yeah, the music comes back at that moment, but for a long time it had stopped. So honestly, I really like the use of the music as well, because it, as far as it's silly, it's very well used in the beginning, where the movie really is laying the foundations for the comedy that it is, and helping in telling it. But then when it gets more serious, it's not afraid to just stop, and the movie kind of becomes more a normal drama. And then whenever it's needed again, because it makes sense, it comes back. So it's a film that also, uses its score wisely and doesn't overstay its welcome, I think. And itself is a good and interesting music as well, just to cap it off, because it's very sort of Pink Panther-ish.
I think the very resolution of the film with when eventually the detective Maxim finds out who's the identity of the thief, being Yuri. It's so very interesting how he decides to go about it and to finally arrest him or not arrest him. Because at first he's very decisive. He has that confrontation at the bar where Yuri lays out the whole plan, and the way that the bar scene is shot is very interesting because it's through a long lens and you're seeing them amongst the crowd at these very crowded bars. So it sounds like anybody can hear this conversation at any point. His mask can fall off not only for the detective but for other people. And as they talk and has to get drunk, and emotional about each other, it's so funny to see and refreshing to see the detective, the figure of authority, the serious man, to kind of surrender to this man's story and true intentions of giving the money off to, orphanages, and not do anything about it, to decide to not arrest them and to go out of the bar singing together. And normally in an American film, I think that wouldn't be the case. My sense was, I was looking at that scene and I felt, well, this would not happen in another movie. This would not happen in an American film where if you had these two characters, the detective and the cat and the mouse meeting each other and being friends, and then finally one finds the identity of the other, I think he would be reluctant if there was that, moral ambiguity, but in the end, he would either kill him or arrest him. No, Bill, no! And then, Bill dies, Bill the criminal. So there would always be that kind of thing, he was my friend, but I had to kill him. I had to put behind bars. And the bars go, and the shadows of the bars in front of his face. Or, Sam Spade delivering the killer, or the femme fatale to the elevator, and it goes down in the Maltese Falcon, she's going to jail. I loved her, but I cannot have her anymore. That kind of stuff. In this movie, it's just so refreshing that he surrenders to the relationship, the warmth of the relationship, and you're like, oh wait, no, you can't do that, but he's going to, and some part of you wants that to happen and wants the man to fly free as a bird. I thought that was a new narrative path that I thought it was very exciting to go with, even if in the end, of course, in another twist of fate, he goes back to his old ways, almost like saying he didn't have to hijack that other car. That wasn't even within his moral plans. He hijacked finally the car of someone who wasn't a corrupt bureaucrat, but he did it in order to frame himself, because deep down he knew that the very act of it was criminal. So I surrender, I give myself to prison. Actually, this is another film that very much like City Lights ends up with the main character going to jail, coming back years later. And I really love the final shot that works in this sort of very densely dramatic way of him. Just, it's the point of view of Ljublia, kind of his love interest, at the bus stops, and he reveals kind of his shaved head, has to say that he went to prison, and he's just smiling, again, a new man. I thought that shot was very, very powerful. But yeah, I don't know what you thought about all of that, but it was the choice to have that be the decision of the detective to not surrender him to jail. I just thought it was very interesting to see, and made the story a whole lot better, a whole lot more engaging.
So you think that at the trial, when he says that he doesn't want to go to jail, he's kind of like pretending, like he's not trying too hard to sell it because he knows that he did something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he like in you know, he would prefer to not go to jail, you know. But I think, I mean, why else you would do that? I think there's that duality to him, you know, like you had your way out. You know, you could also state that you could state it another way. You could think it has, okay, he hijacked the car because he wanted to show himself in the court of law, in the public, and have his case be discussed, and nevertheless say, well, at the very least, you know, could I be saved? Please, judges, let me out. You know, I still want to live my life. But I think somehow deep down he wanted to be arrested. Otherwise, you know, because he had like freedom delivered to him on a silver platter. So why else did he do that? Yeah, I think there's that duality to him. I think he wanted to go in.
Actually, I wasn't sure. Like, I was thinking, why did he steal that car again? I was a bit like,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. But now that the way you explain it, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Either one of those options. The first one being he wants to get arrested. The other one being he wants to put it on a public trial to, you know, to expose, I guess, the corruption of the others. But
Yeah, me neither. For me, it was more like he fell into his old ways, but I didn't really think much else about it.
yeah, I also thought of it
'Cause it's
that way,
not just
but it
old
wouldn't
ways
make
as he
sense.
was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's not stealing. He's stealing from anybody, and he even says, you know, what have I done? You know, he's checking the diary, and it's like,
But no, but
completely
always
outside of
in
the
the
plan.
sense that it was such an habit that he went in, and perhaps this time he wasn't as cautious as he used to be, or this time it was more like instinctual rather than because he knows the car
But
belonged
that to me
to
signifies
bureaucrats.
something. You see, that to me signifies something, narratively speaking. That wouldn't be a throwaway thing.
Yeah, I think that's
And what do you find about the character of Dima and the whole thing with the father? I wasn't as invested in all of that, you know, and the tensions there. I was much more interested in the relationship between the detective and our main guy. But what do you think of that? Because that's, I think, where it laid the more social commentary of the satire, which I wasn't as much invested in, to be fair. But yeah, what do you think?
Which characters?
the
Dima, you know,
bureaucrat.
the bureaucrat who sells these kind of items,
Radios,
you know.
whatever.
Yeah, radios. A little bit of the outside of the Soviet Union.
The guy he steals the car from.
Yeah,
See, yes. There's this whole time given to him the tension with the father-in-law. You know, he's not a good old communist. He's a bit different. I don't know.
he has
There's a little bit there.
like they say it, I think, explicitly that he can't commit to things. He's like, oh, you own this house, but it's in my name. You own this car, but it's in your wife's name, and your bank account is in whatever. So they also are trying to. I wasn't very invested in him.
Yeah.
Again, because of the fact that I wanted a more developed relationship between Maxim and Yuri. And so when we're
Exactly.
spending time with this guy, I'm like,
Exactly.
I don't think we
That's
need
what I was
this
saying.
as much.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't appear that much in scenes that don't have Yuri in them already. So I mean,
But they
I
don't
think,
have Maxim most of the
No,
time.
but still, it's buying time from the movie. It's setting up the world. You know, we want
yeah,
to
but
see the
but
detective
most
and
scenes have Yuri or have some connection with what Yuri is doing because, I mean, for example, when that guy goes into his store or whatever, I mean, you can see that he's trying to swindle these customers with the price of. We know that he's a swindler, and that gives kind of credibility to Yuri stealing his car. But we don't see
that
that
would be
many
fine if you
scenes
had.
just
I mean,
out of the
but the thing
blue.
is, we do, of course, we don't see many because he's not the main guy, right? So it could never be too many scenes as if he was another another important character. But still, you know, if you only had those scenes where you kind of see his work place and how he operates, a little bit corrupt on the side, doing getting these items out of the Soviet Union, who are slightly better and whatnot for higher prices. Okay, but the thing is, you do see him like going to his father-in-law in the country where he's building this dacha, this like country
Yeah,
house.
that's it.
And it's this whole thing given to the relationship between the two, how his father-in-law views him and whatnot. Then there's the party at their house. Then there's the father-in-law going to their house, and a bit more of his commitment ophobia. And it's like, like I don't know. Those are the moments where I'm a bit like, we are really something is being fed to us about this guy, a
I
bit
mean, yeah,
more
that
deeply
that scene
than
with his
thought.
father-in-law, I do get what you mean. But the other ones because they have Yuri in them. Whether it's because he's that in that first scene, giving the couple insurance, or the later scenes where she's stealing their car. So you see Yuri because he's doing that, and you see the other guy because he's either looking at the garage or he's almost entering the car. That scene where he goes to the house and there's his father-in-law. Yeah, I don't really see the relevance. There's some relevance because it's kind of feeding into his character a bit, but I don't entirely see that it's super important. But that's the only one really, I think, because the other ones fit well within the story. And yeah, again, he's a kind of a minor character anyway. I don't.
And also, don't you think that, as a protagonist, his motivations as to why he steals cars stay obscure throughout most of the film? And you could argue that, that there's a sense of mystery there that makes things intriguing. But I think that I'm a bit confused throughout the film as to why he's doing it, and I'm not being fed the mystery part. I'm not being provoked or teased about what's the thing behind this. It's just I'm just taking for granted that he's doing it, and for the longest time, and well, you assume there's mystery because it's unexplained, but there's no provocation towards why. I'm not provoked to what's happening here. It's just and so that aspect of it,
But
because I'm
that,
not provoked or teased, I'm a bit. It bothers me a bit that there's not that provocation or
but
the
to me that was
suggestion there.
actually to me that was
What
actually
was
one of the
interesting?
things that I enjoyed because
Okay.
it doesn't do that sort of thing that you usually see in American movies where the character of the police detective guy says, "But why is he doing this?" Like
I
sort of
mean,
those
we don't need to say
contemplative.
it like that, literally, but yeah,
No, I
okay.
know, but those sort of feeding scenes where yeah, you kind of feel like it's to feed the mystery. And I mean, I like the restraint this film has in just letting us understand that there's a mystery, but not fully giving in to asking the questions and putting everything in the air to make it more enigmatic. I mean, clearly there's something, and I think that's obvious
Oh
from the
yeah,
start. I mean,
but that's what you assume.
first it's because he steals cars from the less obvious places, and then how he does it, and then and then you learn that he has a gang or at least people that work with him. So you kind of, you don't know, you wonder how exactly he's doing everything. And eventually, because you learn that he's giving the money away, you kind of change the mystery into, but why children's charities? Why is he doing this specifically? And that part is the one that I think I'm a little bit more on the fence because I don't entirely understand why he's giving the money to the kids.
That's the thing. For example, to me, it
But
wouldn't be
that's
a matter
different.
of having yeah, yeah. But for example, it wouldn't be a matter to me of having the detective say, "But why, oh why is this happening?" I don't want that. What I wanted more was within the restraint, which I want and desire, would be something that elucidated as to why, oh why children's orphanages. Maybe he passes by an orphanage, something happens, or he interacts with somebody related
But
to an
that
orphanage. You see,
only happens like
something
halfway
without
anyway.
words,
But
halfway.
yeah, I mean,
That
you don't learn
revelation.
immediately. Yeah, that he's giving the money to the kids thing. You only learn that
What
like,
happens halfway? Yeah.
You only learn that very late in the film.
yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I
it's
mean.
yeah, it's yeah, yeah. That's very. But the thing is, I could see him early on in the film passing by, an orphanage building or interacting with someone that gave us a
I don't
suggestion.
I don't
But we
think
don't.
the the orphanage is that important in terms of what the film. I mean, I guess that's a flaw, saying that there's not really an explanation of why the motivation is to an orphanage. I think it's just to say that he's a good guy, he's doing something good, he's giving to kids. I think that's the goal of the orphanage. The more important thing to understand early on is that he's stealing the cars of corrupt people who work in some sort of
But even that
bureaucratic.
detail
But
takes
that's,
a
I think,
while
is
to be understood.
it's relatively, in its restrained manner, it's elucidated well enough. I mean, you see Dima be corrupt in his workplace and have that shady dealings, and then you see Yuri being super obsessed with stealing this guy's car. So you kind of, I mean, you do the math a little bit, and it's probably because he doesn't respect what he does in his work and the fact that he's corrupt. So he's taking his money that he's stealing from people and giving it to a better place. I mean, in that's the social commentary of the thing as well, is that this guy through crime is doing something that the government should be doing, which is taking like the wealth, but and taking it to the appropriate places that need it. But instead, it's people in their own personal lives are getting richer, and so this guy takes its own, Robin Hood aspirations to make things right. I think that's sort of I like that the film doesn't beat you over the head with that. Like,
Yeah, of
it's
course.
just kind of, he's
I
just
didn't also want it to beat you over the head with it. I just want a little power of suggestion. For example, you say it well when you say you could do the math and see that, oh, this guy's corrupt and he steals his car once, twice, three times. I mean, I still think it's a stretch to connect with the fact that, oh, he must be doing it because he's corrupt. I don't know if everybody would think that. It took me a while to actually realize that, even after the theft. If I saw, maybe not going to an orphanage, maybe that would be, that is an example out of my head, but for example, it's thrown out of the mouth, but for example, him being disrespectful in the scene of him talking with the official, for example, it would be feeling a little bit more without giving a direct reference or direct justification as to why he does it to the orphanage or whatever, but it would fulfill that answer of, oh, he's stealing it because he disrespects them, he doesn't like this guy's corrupt ways. That's what I mean. Within that restraint,
I guess his corruption could be a bit more, like, a little clearer, or even maybe a little, because even then, that scene is selling something. It's a type of corruption that it's a bit, at least for me, it's like I'm not even sure what he's doing wrong. I mean, I get from the scene that he's doing something wrong, but it's like just from the way it's acted. But it seems like, what exactly is he doing that is bad?
Yuri's interaction sometimes could have a little bit more mystery to them, I think, in regards to that idea of what's behind this man, without being too obvious. That's what I mean. It wouldn't kill the film.
Personally, I enjoyed the fact that, we learned things kind of at the same time as Maxim, in the sense that as he's figuring things out, we also learn that they're corrupt, and then that he's giving to children. So even though we have suggestions, as you said, here and there with the corruption and different things, I like, at least me, I like the fact that it's a bit the journey of Maxim too, as spectators, and that we are not completely on everything, and eventually we learn things, even if it's only halfway. For me, it's not even a problem, but more of an issue. It's from that moment that we learn most everything about what he does, specifically the giving to the children. Just a bit more as to why he chose the children's charity, and that part, from the half towards the end, could have used a little bit more. I mean, just a bit of enlightenment as to his character, because it wouldn't even be about the issue itself, but more as how that shines a light on his character, and so we would learn a bit more about him, and I think that would have been interesting. Honestly, up until that point, I didn't really have a problem. I enjoyed the being kind of clueless as to why he's doing these things. I mean, I think the detective suggests that maybe it had something to do with him as a kid. I'm not entirely sure. I think there's a conversation they have where he says something about that, but if he does, it's just a one-off and not more discussed later. But I'm not sure.
Then again, we're going back to that thing as well, which is, I think we said something that's very interesting, which is we're following the detective Maxim's logic around the case and him finding out, so we don't know all the pieces of the puzzle. Then again, going back to that thing, I think if we spare the audience from all these steps at the beginning and focus more on constructing their relationship, this cat and mouse game between the two, we would have more access to that logic of accompanying who might be the person, what's behind this person, etc., etc. I think the beginning of the film kind of spends some time around some things that actually don't deserve that much time. But overall, no, it doesn't disqualify the value of the film. I think it's a very funny, unique satire.
Yeah, very well shot, very beautiful.
Very well shot. Very
I
beautiful.
mean, there's great moments. I love when he's talking in the outside, like the entrance of the theater, and he mentions that the thief, one of his characteristics, that he stoops a lot, which means
That's so funny.
and then
I
you
laughed
see
so
the
hard.
guy
Oh my God.
lift him.
Yeah.
Very good.
And then how to use the doors, to as
Very
the detective starts
Scooby-Doo.
mentioning every bit of clue, and then the guy is like evading the situation to not be seen.
Yeah,
It's very funny.
great blocking. Yeah,
And also because part of him is evading the situation to not be revealed, so to speak. So he's afraid of this detective now that he realizes the detective is onto him. At the same time, it's like Chaplin. It's informing us on his obliviousness. The character of Yuri is a little bit of a oblivious, silly fellow. So he's like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah," and then kind of moves on without even noticing that he looks, a little bit stupid in doing so. But yeah, it's very funny.
And the play scene, I mean, it comes at a point of like
Oh yeah,
relevance in the plot, because he already knows that he's guilty, and then he just cuts to the play and he's wearing this ridiculous
yeah,
wig.
that was fascinating. That felt like a Friends episode, like a sitcom, when you're like one of Joey's kind of movie moments when he's on set and there's Gary Oldman or whatever. It's like you have them at the house, and then you cut to the work, and then there's the play, and it's so funny because their real life emotions as people come up as actors, and they're like, "You did this to me. Prepare to die." And they're like having that little scrimmage is very funny.
But
And
to
then
me,
at
it
the end,
was
the
so
final
funny to
play,
see him in his stupid wig, like
in his stupid wig.
after,
Exactly. That was
after
very
all
funny.
that big moments of revelation, then just okay, let's just take a break and go to a play.
that whole thing with them being in the theater is one of the best parts of the film. At least it's
Yes,
one of the best
definitely.
ideas of the film in terms of
Yes.
brings such a unique dynamic to everything. I love that part of it.
Yeah, that they can have such polar hobbies as the theater, being police officers. So I think that was an interesting idea as well, that they would be the ones that had this sort of hobby and side activity.
And then the final scene is super. Has the final play scene is very interesting because just before he gets arrested, he has the right to interpret the role in the play. It's very funny. And when they are lying on the ground, both dead, has both rivals with those swords, just have that kind of shrug and hey, it was good, it did good on the floor and the curtains fall. It was very heartwarming and just matter of fact. The matter of fact style of it was very just refreshing for a film of the 60s. It just makes everything so modern, I guess.
And that's all for today. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and website pages. Feel free to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a little like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. And if you're on YouTube and want to see more videos like this, check out this next one right here. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.